Hello. In this fourth lecture on climate, we're going to explain what some of the consequences of rising CO2 have in our atmosphere, what those consequences are for humanity and Earth's environments. So, what should we expect in the future? Expectations for the future have everything to do with the amount of carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels. As we discussed, that the amount of CO2 each year goes up and down, but overall, we are putting more CO2 in the atmosphere than plants are able to take up. And so we have seen carbon dioxide rise year after year, and we are also seeing temperature rise as that carbon dioxide absorbs more of those greenhouse gas, as carbon dioxide absorbs more of that infrared energy from our planet. So we're about here. We have seen about a 2.2 degree Fahrenheit increase in average temperature across the planet. You might say, well, that's not really that much. Well, it is extremely important and extremely significant for some of the more significant parts of our planet that have much more sensitive environments, and we are already starting to see damages in those places. Going ahead, we have three different possible models for how carbon dioxide will affect our atmosphere. We have the high emissions model. This basically is what happens when we don't change anything and we continue to produce the same amount or more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere than what plants are able to take up. And each year you can see temperature increases by more amounts than what it was the previous year. And all the way until we see rises in 6, 7, or even 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, think about the summer months that you experience, or the summer months in wherever you might be. Things are probably already kind of hot. Can those environments sustain another 8 degree increase in temperature, average temperature? It is very hard to imagine what our society looks like with that much increase. Does our infrastructure have the capacity to handle that amount of increase in energy spending for air conditioning? Do people have access to that? How could the environment not sustain that level of increase? There are other models that have low, medium, or lower amounts of emission models around the amount of CO2 that is being released into the Earth's atmosphere, but all of them have some continued change and some continued increase. Ultimately, as a society and as a globe, as a human race, we have the power to determine which path we choose, and we'll talk about some choices that can be made. So the high emissions model, this is what happens when there are no changes to the present amount of CO2 production that is put into our atmosphere. This leads to around a 3.5 to 4.5 degree increase by 2050. That may seem like a long time from now, but honestly, 25 years goes a lot faster than you realize. I can tell you that for certain. And that much temperature increase would be a significant change for every single environment on our planet. This would increase the amount of heat waves and droughts, as well as the types of floods and storms that we experience. With hotter temperatures, the atmosphere can hold more water, which means that the severity of storms increases as well. This also leads to sea level rise because there's more melting of the glacier ice. And so coastlines begin to become more fragile. Their infrastructure is not able to handle the size of waves and storms that they experience each year. So cities, maybe they are not flooding like places like Miami. Maybe they're not underwater yet entirely, but a significant storm that hits said city on the coast is no longer has the infrastructure to defend itself and protect itself from the storm waters that rise during those events. This type of change also results in a major shift in ecosystems, as well as the agriculture that can be grown in certain areas. Farmland that was once suitable for a certain type of crop migrates northward or changes in its location in entirety. There's also changes in the prevalence of pests and different organisms that are essential or detrimental to the agriculture process. And then finally, there could be rises in infectious diseases, the expansion of habitats for things like mosquito-borne viruses can also increase as temperatures stay warmer. I hear a lot about ticks and how they carry things like Lyme disease. The reason why that is expanding across places of the Northeast is because the winters are not as cold, and the ticks that survive one year have a greater likelihood of surviving into the next year. And so they can then pass on a virus to other ticks, and those infected ticks can proliferate and transfer their infections to humans. So definitely significant issues that we are already seeing, and increases in temperatures lead to this situation. Now, low emissions, they are a reduction of this. Fewer, less severe weather events, we still have them, but they are not as severe. Slower sea level rise, this gives time for communities to adapt. There are chances for us to innovate and create a better plan to protect fragile ecosystems. And overall, we're able to prepare and plan and provide more security to our health, our water supplies, and our food. So what needs to happen? Needs to be a rapid shift away from fossil fuels. We have to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we put into the environment. There's money that is needed to finance the creation of clean energy sources for not only ourselves, but also the other countries that are wanting to develop and wanting to advance. We want them to do it on the cleanest possible energy. And so we need to provide financing for them. Is this happening? We'll see in just a minute. We need to slow deforestation. Forests are those valuable environments that suck up the CO2 from the atmosphere. Make transit more sustainable and accessible, and have the infrastructure to support those changes that are coming. And hey, eating healthier can also lead to reduced waste in our food system. So much food waste exists within our society today. If we reduce the amount of food waste and where our food is coming from, then there's less of a burden on our food system to produce more greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, a lot of these things are not happening. There's some individual movement growing around eating healthier, which I think is really, really great, but it still isn't at really a cultural level. There is a lot of changes that need to happen, and they really just aren't happening at a broad or wide scale that is yet. I don't like to harp on how we aren't making these changes yet, because there is always a time and an opportunity to change, for individuals as well as communities, for states and countries. We really only lose when we give up. So never let anyone tell you that there's nothing that can be done at any point, and so why even try? That's just not true. Any effort at any scale can have an effect and change the consequences of climate change. And so I would encourage you to let go of any perspectives that might fall under the phrase of doomerism, and instead choose what your values are, and find those things that are meaningful to you, that you want to protect and you want to ensure for the future, and begin to make your life changes around those. I believe that we can inspire each other by the changes that we make, for the different goals that we have. In the future, you might start to hear more about things called geoengineering. These are pretty radical in their attempts to mitigate some of the causes of that increasing temperature in Earth's atmosphere. Some of them look like adjusting the amount of solar radiation that we receive on Earth. Some of these are as sci-fi as putting space-based mirrors above our planet to reflect the amount of light. Sometimes it can look as simple as just changing the surface area to restore landscapes that may have once not had invasive species, and instead were more barren, to reflect that surface energy back. I think a lot of these things sort of don't fix the underlying problem of where we're getting our energy from. And instead, these could be like temporary solutions. Another temporary solution is called carbon dioxide removal. These are machines that are specifically engineered to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. This is a very encouraging development in recent years, and that one that is very useful in locations where there's an abundance of green energy, say locations that have active geothermal production, or large solar arrays that don't have as much demand from consumers yet. That excess green energy can be used to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. However, it's important to remember that large-scale carbon dioxide removal is not really seen as possible or feasible. And instead, this is more of a supplement to those major societal and personal changes that might be necessary, that are, yeah, necessary in order to weaken or reduce the amount of climate impacts.